Welcome to the Life Rocks podcast. In this podcast, we explore how nature, science, education, and culture can benefit all children and future generations. This is a show for educators, parents, mentors, and anyone interested in making the lives of our children, families, and communities better. So sit back, take a breath, and enjoy the show. And now for your host, Asher Cloran.
Hello, and welcome to the Life Rocks podcast. Today, I'm very excited to have our esteemed guest, John Nguyen, who is our Oceans Ambassador at Life Rocks. And he has been working on creating some of the best ocean resources that children will have ever seen. Not only that, he is someone who's led a career into the ocean environment that is truly inspirational. Someone who's got a curious passion for all of the wondrous things that we find in our great blue oceans. But first of all, before we begin this show, I want to encourage you to like and subscribe, not because it's just something that we all do nowadays, but because it does help us grow our podcast. It helps Life Rocks find more awesome guests and helps us reach everybody with our awesome message, which is science and nature is where we ought to be placing our attention for development, education, and a passionate life that rocks. So without further ado, I'm very excited to get into today's podcast with John Nguyen, microbiologist and marine biologist. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Great to be here.
Just as oceans have the most variety, pretty much next to soils of all life on Earth. Isn't that right?
Indeed. It's a very big and very complex network of organisms, from your huge fishes to the smallest of creatures. The ocean's kind of got a huge amalgamation of every possible living thing you could think of, and they all interconnect with each other to create a nice balanced system that keeps the planet running.
And it didn't all happen overnight, did it? This ocean stuff. It's been a long time coming, and scientists believe that the first life started in oceans. What got you excited in oceans?
So for me, my ocean curiosity didn't properly start until well into the years of my studies. My initial journey of wanting to study animals didn't actually drop in until my final year of year 12, when I very suddenly switched ideas of where I wanted to be and where I wanted to spend my time and energy. From a young age, I have always been drawn to animals. I had huge collections of encyclopedias that my parents provided for me, and I noticed that I would ignore every other subject, every other topic within those encyclopedias, and only really drifted towards all the animal sections. During the high school years, my path was more geared towards the maths realm. Think like engineering type of careers, because I was inherently good at that type of subject, but deep down it wasn't really a passion. I kind of only really chose certain subjects because those were things that I was good at. I did do a bunch of biology subjects, and that ignited little bits within me, but still, throughout all high school, animals and nature was more a hobby. But once my final year 12 happened and it was time to choosing unis and actual study paths, did a quick switch from an engineering path And I went, stuff it, I'm going to go study zoology. I want to go
Cool.
learn all the different things that's possible, based on my early years of encyclopedia learning. These were the things that I'd always wanted to learn about and was always naturally curious. It took a couple years for me to really hone in on my passions and really decide for myself, if I'm going to go study something, I want it to be something that I'm like furiously passionate about. And that's where my zoology studies came through. So a couple of years of zoology with my uni, then randomly opened up another field for me to sink my teeth into, which was microbiology. And so I ended up with a bachelor's in zoology and microbiology as my major. And those two were a really good match because they seem to meld together all the different facets of biology, going from learning about lions and elephants and all these terrestrial animals to then zooming right down into the nitty gritty and looking at bacteria and algae and those sorts of things. For the marine things, that really took off just from a single subject during my uni studies with the zoology bachelor's, where a class went up to Queensland for a field trip just for a week to learn and see how marine science was conducted, from snorkeling out on the Great Barrier Reef, doing coral surveys, counting fishes, very, very baseline things, but it was that type of practical and field experience that really honed it in for me. I discovered a school up in Queensland that did marine science, and I thought back to that single field trip, and I think that's, out of all the things that I've learned in my zoology studies, the marine stuff is what hooked me most, because just seeing that glimpse of what ocean life was enough for me to see the scope of what marine life is. And again, it got me back to that point of, oh, I really just want to know more. I want to know how all of these things work.
And that, my friends, is why John is the perfect ambassador for Life Rocks. And the whole concept of ambassador really has come about through understanding that there's certain people out there that are immensely curious about nature. And when these people tend to follow their curiosity, they tend to learn a lot of awesome stuff about nature that they want to share with others. And John is definitely a living example of that. Someone who's gone through life with a curiosity for animals that then led into a curiosity for the field of biology, that led into curiosity for the micro world of biology, that then led itself to even more specificity into marine environments. And maybe without those encyclopedias that the parents had left there as a point of curiosity, this path may have never begun. Maybe if John's family wasn't a type of family that allowed curiosity to be explored, this path wouldn't have come about. This is the sort of example of some of the messages that we want to share on Life Rocks, which is, unless your family had a career in sciences, they don't really understand what careers in sciences mean, how they look like. They're not like a rare thing. I think I've come across the mentality of like, oh, it's hard to be a scientist. I'm sure it is hard to be a scientist. It's hard to be anything. It's hard to live a life. But what's really hard is not following your passions. And as where a career in the sciences can really lead you into having so many diverse opportunities that aren't just in a lab. They could be out in the field looking after environments, analyzing environments. So we want to share with you so that you can share with your children and share with your students that there are diverse pathways for a career in the sciences that are non-conventional, and they involve you following your curiosity. So, John, you followed your curiosity. You got a degree in the science. You got a master's in marine microbiology. It filled your cup full of knowledge, but then I'm sure you faced some of those challenging questions. What do I do with this degree? Where do I go from here? And maybe you can share a little bit about your challenges with that journey and how you might pay it forwards to others who are thinking about getting a degree in the sciences, but not knowing where to go with it afterwards. And can you shed some light on that scenario for us?
Yeah, sure. So once I'd completed my master's, I jumped straight into research, which was on coral. I won't go into too much detail because it's a very niche area, but I continued on doing that type of research at a marine institute and continued that for about a year and a half. It was like a volunteers researcher because my master's thesis was more or less a pilot study, which means that this field isn't well known enough, and there aren't enough scientists that were looking into this particular area. So what was hard was there wasn't a lot of funding there. So hence why I'd had to jump on as a volunteer researcher, because if this was something that I wanted to do, I just had to put in my own time and effort, because this was something that I thought was important to look into, even though there weren't any big scope ideas of what it could be or if it could help society and whatnot. There was not as much support as, say, a lot of my colleagues who veered more into applied sciences, but I loved it enough, and so did my supervisor and head of department. So I was able to continue working onto this research in hopes that what I had looked into would then spawn more questions, more curiosities for someone else to also continue researching. And it was a lot of that understanding that to continue pursuing a career in science, there was going to be lots of volunteering. And it was the research that really allowed me to keep going too, because I knew that every bit of effort and time that I was putting into these bits of volunteer positions, it was adding to the library of knowledge overall. And as a researcher and as a scholar, that's really all I cared about, was the scholarly efforts, the advancing human understandings of things that happen around the world. Because sometimes it might take us to study the seemingly insignificant. I could see the potentials of where it could go. The pure research aspect of it is what really filled my cup and kept me fulfilled. And yeah, very fun feeding the mind and allowing my curiosity to really flourish in that realm.
Yes. And I think that full cup of yours is now overflowing onto the Life Rocks projects, where John is leading the development for our educational resources that is super fun, plays into all of the different marine habitats and different marine ecosystems and the denizens that dwell there. John, can you take us through a little bit of what this marine kit is and how the marine card game has been developed, and maybe how vital your research in oceans has been to the overall creation of this resource? I know you've put so much effort and love into these resources and tried to distill down these great concepts from oceans biology into simple things that children can understand. How did those years of doing research impact what you're creating now? And how has that process been for you, turning all of that knowledge into something that's like a game?
Good question. So I think that my particular areas that I went to study being zoology, microbiology, and marine biology. Those three have been a really good combination of fields that has allowed me to see things from a very zoomed out perspective. And as I'm able to see it from a zoomed out perspective, seeing those connections between different areas of biology has helped me to summarize it, because as you said, field of marine biology is vastly complex. Unlike terrestrial biology, which is all land animals, the one big thing that differentiates the ocean world is that there is the ocean that encompasses everything. On land, everything occurs just on a single plane. We've got the ground, you've got trees and plants, animals, but they're all operating from this singular plane. Aside from birds, of course, birds can fly. But in the oceans,
you're either on the ground or in the sky, and everything else is in between.
Exactly. But say in the oceans, the extra dimension is that as an animal, I don't just have to worry about what is in my line of sight, but in the oceans, it is from everything in front of me that I can see, but then everything above and below and behind, and it's all connected by water. So that aspect is what really makes it hyper complex, because it now involves extra bits of knowledge about physics and chemistry, which isn't things that I'd say I'm an expert on, but because I've studied the marine side of things, I've been able to see how those aspects relates to the ocean's natural systems, and in turn think about it more as like the planet's natural systems. Yeah,
that is a very interesting thought, and what that evoked for me then is the questions around how does scent travel in water as opposed to in air, and how does sound and vibration sustain itself in liquid as opposed to air? How far will it travel? Does it travel slower but last longer? Like, these are the sort of questions that come up once we start thinking in those terms.
exactly. I don't think I can answer them on a comprehensive level, but within the ocean, under the water, scent and sound, they've now got a medium that they have to work with, determine how far these things travel. Sound underwater travels a lot further than within the air. Those things adds in a bit more bits of complexity.
It's really understanding these different layers of all of the moving pieces that make up oceans, the physics, the environment, the way water affects organisms, the way that that environment affects survival, adaptations and behaviors of animals and growth patterns of plants, and all of these sort of things that you've gathered together. Now you can teach it in a simple way, but not beforehand.
The looking at it from that zoomed up perspective, just to be able to explain these concepts where people can use that as a puzzle piece to then add to their understanding, the pattern recognition that a lot of these things are all interconnected and they all have a role. They all have a role in how they affect this huge natural system that we call home.
Now, for those of you who don't know, Life Rocks is not just a podcast. It is an education foundation centered around connecting children to the magic of nature through earth sciences. As a self-funded foundation and startup, we are constantly seeking support so that we can continue our great work. So if you feel called to donate to Life Rocks, please head down to the show notes and find the relevant donation link. We accept regular money as well as cryptocurrencies. We greatly appreciate you, our Life Rocks community. Now, back to the show.
John, you've created some incursions that go into classrooms to teach this knowledge and created it so that it's a curriculum of knowledge that builds upon each other, so that by the end of doing the oceans incursions, students understand habitats and how individuals play roles within that habitat, and then how those habitats then work together to create the oceans as we know them on Earth. Can you share with us a little bit about these incursions, how they're structured, and how students engage with these topics?
So how I've chosen to structure these incursions was based around focusing on just a singular ecosystem, that being coral reefs, because coral reefs house lots of the ocean's animals at one point or another. And they're also one of the connecting points that connects lots of different habitats together. Why I want to focus on just the singular ecosystem is if I can teach how this ecosystem of coral reefs works, as in look at all the different moving parts that makes it, a healthy, balanced ecosystem, then taking that framework and say focusing on another ecosystem, I can then just change the context, change the different animal or the different plants that are there, so that the kids can get a bit of a frame of reference and see, okay, this is how an ecosystem works. It takes a bunch of different things, talking about different trophic levels, predators that eat consumers and consumers that eat plants. These concepts apply to all ecosystems. It just might have different animals. But my idea with doing it in this way is it won't bog kids down on big information overloads. That's where I can then go into a bit more about the science, the explaining how, and taking in little tidbits of information, so that it's not so overwhelming.
100%. Something we know deeply at Life Rocks is that passion teaches louder than words, and passion teaches louder than intellect. And we might be really into science things and love all of the facts, but unless we can tell a story and put things into a context for children that's more meaningful than just a collection of disparate facts, doesn't really stick. And I'm sure we can all know from experience and having been taught, we've all been students, when a teacher is passionate about a subject and they know about it, they can transmit that passion. And it sort of, it doesn't always matter exactly what that teacher is saying. The energy and the passion speaks and connects students to the topic through that. What we've tried to do at Life Rocks is package that passion for science and combine it with art, science, and this simplified context-driven mode of learning, which is learning through experience, learning through doing, learning through interacting, learning through playing. So this is why the kits, this is why the board games, this is why the cards that we've developed, not only in oceans now, but also in soils, crystals, metals, and some more coming out later in this year. John, throughout creating this card game that's got the different habitats, where this is actually a standalone product that's separate to the incursions that are going into schools. But, we find that taking these resources, taking these card games in as teaching aids into the classroom can allow a teacher to activate that passion, because oftentimes teachers are resource poor, they're time poor, and they don't have the type of resources at hand to make a classroom really pop when it comes to a particular subject or offering. So that's essentially what the ambassadors are up to here, is creating the experiences so that they can go to a classroom and transmit that passion, but also to leave behind an offering and a resource for the teachers at that school to go, hey, this gives you exactly everything that you need to teach a class on oceans, make it fun, make it scientific, and cater to all of the students' needs. John, do you want to share any reflections or fun interactions that you've seen or experienced through creating and sharing this card game?
In the very early days, when I'd only just made prototypes of the cards, where I had chosen a list of ocean animals. It shows the animal, what animal group they're in, what habitat they're from, and what type of feeding they are. But I'd had it out at a family gathering. As they were playing through the game, within the matching game, it was based off, you can only match the card if it's from the same animal group. And some of the different animals, they're from the same animal group, but the kids they wouldn't think that they were. So for example, something like an octopus and a sea snail.
Yeah.
They're both from the animal group called Mollusca, which is more commonly known as mollusk. And from looking at those two animals, even adults, most wouldn't have no idea that they're from the same family. But somewhere along the line, they broke off and changed over time to adapt to their particular environment. And watching my little kids go, oh my gosh, that's no way, how, like, what, that's crazy. I'm like, yeah, exactly. And it's those type of experiences, those type of big wow factors that I know, that because that matching aspect of looking at the animal groups, that's teaching the kids about the range of different animal forms that exist in not just the oceans, but the planet. In land animals, most things that people would know, cats, dogs, birds, reptiles, turtles. Yeah, I just named a lot of different types of animals, but they're actually all from the same animal group. Whereas in the ocean, there's 5, 6, 7 extra ones with totally different body plans. Some that don't even have bodies, some that actually look like plants. That understanding that under the water is a completely different world. It's a completely alien planet down there. We don't need to look into the stars or other planets to find alien worlds, because under the oceans, it already is that. And that for me is the wow. I spent my childhood reading fantasy books and escaping into those worlds because it's very different. But upon going through the marine stuff, that's what really got me there.
Can you share with us, John, some of the most wow inspiring things that have entranced you in oceans?
Okay, all right. So one of the coolest animals I think that exists, not just in the water, but just in general in the animal kingdom, is the mantis shrimp. Now they're the same family as things like crabs and lobsters.
Okay.
And just for reference, it's from the animal group called arthropod. So a crustacean is only used to describe underwater arthropod. They call it a subphylum. I've been using the word animal group, but the proper word I should be using is phylum. And that describes arthropods, and same as mollusks. Okay, first cool fact, they have one of, if not the most complex eyes on the planet. They can see a range of 12 colors, whereas humans can only see 4. That's a pretty cool fact. I wanted to start off with something basic, even though being able to see all the different colors, very cool, right? What really gets me about the mantis shrimp, what really fascinates me, is that they have the fastest punch on the planet. Fastest punch on the planet. How fast? As fast as a something caliber Magnum. So like a pistol, as fast as that. And how that works is they have a special mechanism in their arms. So yes, their arms are like this, but there's a special spring action that allows them to kind of
spring-loaded elbows.
Spring-loaded elbow punch, not just punch. There's two types. One type has a club, and that's why I think it got deemed the fastest punch. But the other type is it's a claw as well.
Oh wow!
Now,
Like a spike.
The ones that have the claws, that's great for hunting and spearing fish. The ones with the clubs, these things can break shells. These things can break snail shells. These things can break hermit crab shells. Other crabs as well. They will use these clubs to rip apart limbs. So
holy moly!
Hectic. Really, really incredible predator.
How big are these shrimps?
Tiny.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's bigger than I thought, though.
Maybe only as big as your phone, something like that.
Okay.
But quite small, but highly, highly effective predator with their cool eyes that they can see the different colors and be able to hone in on prey. But then they've got this crazy fast punch. But that's not the coolest thing. The coolest thing is their punch actually has strong enough force that it creates not just a mini shockwave because of how fast it is, but the point of contact where they hit their prey, they create these little things called cavity bubbles. So tiny little air bubbles, but because of how fast their punch goes, the bubbles form, but then once the bubbles dissolve, or sorry, I should say collapse, when those bubbles collapse in on themselves, it generates heat as hot as the surface of the sun. Momentarily, just a fraction of the time, but that punch hits the surface of a snail shell as hot as the surface of the sun. And if that wasn't enough, the shockwave that I spoke about earlier, that is also a thing too. So they've just got some magical weapons up their sleeve.
They are like a third level Pokemon card, these guys. They have it all going
next
on.
level, mega evolution. I don't know where Pokemon's at now, but they're like whatever Pokemon is, just add on an extra couple levels because they are the ultimate. They are the ultimate.
This is happening in an ocean near you. Where are these guys found? Is it Australia?
All over.
Oh, wow.
Around coral reefs.
Punching people out everywhere.
I really hope not. That's a mighty burn you get.
It's actually not sharks that we've got to be worried about. It's these mantis shrimp. They'll jump right on top of your surfboard with you and just.
So this particular species, I believe, is called a peacock mantis shrimp.
Yeah.
Because of all these pretty beautiful colors, but you can see those clubs there as well. They're tucked right under their arms. But this is one of the cards.
Epic, so epic. We're so excited to have them land, and you Life Rocks audience will be the first to know. Hey John, let's say a child has a passion for oceans. They say to their mum, I want to be a marine biologist. And how do we encourage that child there? And how do we share something with parents now who can pay it forward to their child who shows an interest in oceans?
Well, I guess the advice that I really wish that I could have gotten as a kid is to learn what you want to learn, but like it's the learning isn't just about understanding, these cool facts and these little bits of animals, because learning about marine biology and marine science is learning about how the natural biological systems of the planet work. That is important to know. Parents, don't let the knowledge of things that are going on in the world, knowing about pollution and warming waters and all those things, don't let that deter you, because in the oceans. There is too much wonder there. Not
Yes.
enough for any one person to experience in a lifetime, not just kids, but everyone, to be able to take these things and carry it throughout their whole life, because the sense of awe and wonder of the ocean and of just the natural world means that there's an appreciation for us as humans, because we are also animals and we are also part of this natural world. So understanding how the natural world works and understanding what's out there, being in awe, being inspired, learning the different interactions is like I don't think I'd know as much as I know about myself or community or society if I didn't learn about these animals, because
Wow.
within the animal systems, there are also their own animal behaviors, and learning about lions and how their family systems work. These animal systems have existed for as long as the planet has been. It just might have been in different forms, but in some semblance, that has existed, and we are just the materialization of that now.
That's really cool. Yeah, the entire natural world is honestly a reflection of so many things, and all of what we have as humans, our emotions, our world that we've built, our observational mind, our curiosities, they've all come from nature somewhere along the line. We are the fruit of planet Earth, the cherry on the tree. And what you said there about encouraging the connection to nature, not the destruction and the damage of nature, and highlighting that to children is really important. It's what we want to do at Life Rocks, is share what's amazing and beautiful and wondrous and nurturing about this earth, so that when children grow up, it's natural to protect and fight for and care for and love and push back against all the damage and the unconscious activities that are getting pushed onto the earth. And I think our recent podcast with Graham Robertson, if you haven't seen that, he is an amazing example of an environmental activist who developed a passion for cold ocean birds, and because of it has changed the entire worldwide fishing industry in many areas to save millions of cold ocean seabirds, albatross especially. And what a story. What a story to think I'm a person who saved millions of seabirds' lives.
One
Like, that's
person did that. One
so
person.
cool. So exactly, one person, it almost brings a tear to my eye, but he just changed the way that the fishing nets are organized and the way that they get fed into the oceans. And he only did this, right, through observing the depth to which albatross birds would dive, all the different species, till he came up with the average depth dive of all the species. And he just made a device that sunk the nets below that dive depth, and bang, no more dead birds getting caught in nets. Amazing. I really resonate with what you said, John, and I'm so grateful to have you on board the Life Rocks team, as we all are. We really needed someone to lead the ocean's wisdom community. And yeah, I hope to share more podcasts as time goes on, with John coming on to share what's new in oceans. And this year we are coming out with some oceans products, so stay tuned. Oceans resources, I might say. Everyone out there, thanks so much for listening. Remember to like and subscribe, and to share with someone out there that wants to see the Life Rocks podcast. That's right, John. Like, he's got the thumbs
That's the
up.
like it,
That's
thumbs
the
up,
like.
right?
Thanks so much for listening. And until next time, everybody, make sure that life rocks.
Thank you so much for listening to the Life Rocks podcast. If you enjoyed the show, then leave us a review. We'll be back soon with more inspiring content, and in the meantime, remember, life rocks.